I'll make a start. And for anyone who hasn't joined a Tableau user group before, the Perth Tableau user group is essentially a community of people who are just really into Tableau. We like data visualization, and we come together to sort of talk about Tableau, talk about data, to share our knowledge and to make a network of people that are all into the same things, and so we can build off each other. This month, the organising committee for the Perth Tableau user group is Frank, Damien and myself, with special new guests or committee members, Daniel Kasatchkow and Matthias Giles. So welcome to those new committee members. And as always, for the Perth Tableau user group, we're always interested in finding new committee members. So if you're interested in helping out set up an event, and we promise it'll be better run next time with, with WebEx, then you definitely reach out to us either via LinkedIn or via email, and we'll talk. So we also have a LinkedIn group for Perth Tableau user group, and especially if you're in Perth, definitely consider signing up to the Perth Tableau user group. It's a place where we can talk Tableau, share details of upcoming events, and if this is something you're interested in doing in the future, definitely come through. As we say every single time we present, we're interested in presenters. So if you like Tableau, if you like data, if you like analytics, definitely consider reaching out to us and presenting. It doesn't matter if you're a complete newbie or a super Tableau whiz. We have presentations from people in the government and private sectors, and it's always really nice to see how different organisations use Tableau differently. And that's really how we as teams and as organisations make ourselves better at data as well. So regardless of project big or small, definitely come along and reach out to us again via LinkedIn or email, and we can chat. So today we have two presentations from Daniel Kasatchkow, who is a data analyst with Trilogy Education, and also from Lihua Huang, who is a finance manager with Woodside. And if we can squeeze them in at the end, depending on time, Stephen Street from Tableau may be presenting some updates on Tableau to see what's new. Obviously, because we are in like an online environment as opposed to being in person, there are a few special housekeeping rules. And one of those is just, we have a chat channel to ask questions. So you may see at the bottom or the top of the screen, depending on what format you're viewing this in, a little symbol that looks like that blue chat symbol there. So you open the chat channel and feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat channel, and also just keep your microphone muted during the presentation, but obviously everyone's doing that so well at the moment. At the end of both of the presentations, we'll have a few questions, so I'll read them out from chat, and we'll have a bit of a discussion. So without further ado, I guess we'll present Daniel Kasatchkow. So Daniel is a data and analytics leader at Trilogy Education. Daniel is a data expert, so he has experience in data analytics, data strategy, and data visualization. He's previously worked at the Capricorn Society and the Australian Bureau of Statistics, but he's currently leading a data bootcamp out of the University of Western Australia. So in an increasingly data-driven world, which we all live in, it's important that we're all speaking the same language and we can all communicate with data, which is what Daniel will be talking about today when he presents his talk, Data Literacy, a Keystone of a Data-Driven Organisation. So I'll hand the little ball, which we have in WebEx, over to Daniel, and he can present.
Perfect. Let's see if that works. Okay, great. Looks like I'm in. So thanks so much, Kate, for that. Very useful. So my talk today is going to be all about data literacy. Let me just move this little image over on the side there. So what is data literacy? It's something which is starting to become more in vogue in sort of the data management, data space in general. It's got a few different definitions, and that's quite normal, which is happening at the moment in the data space. What do we mean by data management, data governance, and all this other stuff? I've seen various different definitions coming through for data literacy. My concept of what data literacy is, it's basically, look, breaking it apart. We've got data, which is about facts, statistics, how we look at numbers, look at information, and you've got literacy, the ability to read and write. So data literacy is our ability both communicate data to someone else and for them to actually understand and comprehend what you're saying. So it's a two-way street. You've got the people who are creating the reports, the dashboards, the visualizations, and those who are actually then consuming those, getting the insights from them to actually end up creating those business decisions. So it's a two-way street going on with data literacy. It's not just the responsibility of one person or the analyst or the manager. It's a whole organization which needs to start considering what is data literacy for their organization and how they can actually work to improve it. So this idea now coming through of digital organizations, where you can sort of break businesses and organizations into three components. You've got your people, your staff, the people who are in the offices, the processes, what's actually happening in those organizations, and then you've got the technology, the IT space. And they all communicate with each other through data. Data is the central thing which is making an organization happen. Data is generated through processes and also was fed back into them to actually make the decisions. Do you get the home loan or not? Do they give insurance for you or not? All this is driven by data. People are generating that data and also consuming it to actually make their business decisions. And data is being fed in and out of technology systems, be it Tableau, databases, ERP systems, all the difference going on. So, my mouse is jumping ahead of me. So what skills do we have? If you're looking as being a data analyst, you'd often be thinking, great, I need to have some computer skills. I need to be able to be competent on a computer. I need to have some level of math and stats skills. I need to know what averages are, central limit theorems, being able to understand spreads. You need to have that general idea. Of course, you'd need to have some subject matter expertise coming through. Okay. I'm hoping there's no other person having trouble with sound. If they are, yell out and let me know. So everyone has their own subject matter expertise, and that's really central to being a data analyst. There's no point being an analyst if you don't understand the data you're actually working with. But finally, one element, one skill set, which is often forgotten in the race to find the perfect data analyst is that communication angle. You can be the greatest data analyst in the world. You can find those insights and those trends. But if you can't communicate it to someone else, the next person along in the chain, that manager, that person making that business decision, well, is it even any effort, well, any worth of actually have created that insight? It's core that you need to be able to communicate those insights, those trends, those things which you've done and you've found from the data to another person. Now, those skills, it'd be great if you can be the one magic unicorn who has all the core skills coming together. But the new way of approaching it is you look at data teams where you go, what are the skill sets I need from the entire team? Do I need it from just one person or can I get it from various people together? And as a team, they can deliver these skill sets to the organization. So you might have someone who's really good with maths and really good with the subject matter expertise, and you've got someone else who is a UX expert. They know how to create HTML websites and they are really good at communication. Great. Have them working together. It may not be one full FTE for each of them. It might be just part-time that they collaborate on efforts. But the idea is these communications, these interpersonal competencies are becoming really central to being a data analyst in a modern workforce. So let's go for a quick example of this. We have our Bureau of Meteorology. Our meteorologists, they know weather data inside and out. They're pretty high math experts out there. They know their computer systems. And they'll try to communicate to the general public with something like this. So we see the minimum temperature being 12 degrees, the maximum being 18 degrees, possible rainfall, chance of rain 90%, and the rainfall's between 2 to 4 millimeters. But as a layman, a person on the street, what do these numbers mean? Temperature, we get an idea. We know what minimum and maximum are. Most people out there know what those are. But what does any chance of rain mean? Is that anywhere in Perth that it's going to rain? Is that there's 90% chance of 2 millimeters to 4 millimeters of rain? If you actually dive into the literature behind the Bureau of Meteorology, any chance of rain means anywhere in Perth, you've got 0.2 millimeters. That's the chance. The 2 to 4 millimeters is actually saying there's 50% chance you're going to have 2 millimeters and 25% chance you'll have 4 millimeters. But their actual definition of even what Perth is isn't very clear. If it rains just in Mandurah, does that mean this was an accurate prediction of what the rain is? If you are up in Joondalup and you see no rain, you'd be like, well, I didn't see anything. Is this still within that 90% chance of rain? When we're talking about data literacy, you need to think both the person who's creating it, they know this matter, they know this subject really well, but the end users may not fully comprehend, or they may incorrectly comprehend the information which has been sent to them. A lot of people I talk to, if they see something like this, they're like, great, there's 90% chance I'll get 2 to 4 millimeters rain, which is not the story the Bureau of Meteorology is actually wanting to give. And they are working with UX people to try and improve this so it's actually clearer for the end users, the consumers of their reports, to actually understand what is actually going on. But it's a complicated matter, and it's really hard to get that to the general public. Thankfully, in organizations, we don't have as much of an issue going to the whole general public. We have a limited pool of consumers of information. Your colleagues, the people who are below you, people above you, people who you can interact with quickly and easily. So when we're using Tableau and other BI tools out there, and we're trying to create these insights and we're actually doing some data storytelling, let's just make sure that we're just putting together visualizations, but we also give an explanation, a narrative for these. Don't just put up the graph and think that graph speaks for itself. Actually put words to make sure that the message you're trying to impart to the consumer is clear. Make it explicit, not implicit. Make sure there's full comprehension about what's going on. It might be bleedingly obvious what's happening in your chart, but if you add in the text, you can make sure there's not going to be a miscommunication happening there. So don't let the data alone be there. Let there be a story. Let there be a narrative associated with your dashboards. Now, this, of course, is always going to be in context. You need to think, who is the primary reader of my dashboards? Who is the primary consumer of my information that I'm putting together? And they might also be subject matter experts, and they might have a pretty strong level of math skills. Great, perfect. It makes your job a bit easier. But if you're going to a wider audience, or you're not totally sure on who your consumers are, be explicit. Make sure you spell out everything. Use that ability to put text into your dashboards or your reports to make sure that your message is getting across to the right people without being changed or modified along the way. We have organizations like Gartner out there who are now starting to take up the ball and actually saying, yep, for the executives, the senior managers, they need to actually start learning to think like a data scientist. It's no good for them to just go, great, I'm the executive, I'm the most powerful person in the room, and just going, I'll believe what I want and I'll let the analyst tell me that I'm right. They need to now start thinking with a data science mindset. Part of the role as a data analyst, you need to be able to educate upwards. Make sure that these senior managers, these executives, those people above you in the food chain, they know what to do with the data, what it actually means. If they've asked you to give you an average of a number, but you think, wait, a median would be better, explain that to them. Explain them why there's a difference. Educate them as they're going along. So how can we actually improve data literacy within an organization? So for those of you who know change management, this will be pretty clear. We can look within an organization, you can group people into 4 groups. Those who are the leaders, those who are going to be out there proactively trying to make the change. You're going to be those who will follow the leaders. They'll look at what the leaders are doing and follow one step behind. You'll have the vast majority of people who will be wait and see. Show me that it's worth my effort to actually make that change, and then I'll follow you. And then you'll have your naysayers, those who are like, I love the status quo and I will do everything in my power to remain unchanged. So what do? Those who are the naysayers, those who are going to be difficult to work with, let's not worry too much about putting effort into them. Quarantine them, put them to one side. For the others, we can start looking at building up awareness of math skills, of communication skills. Make sure we have a common language going on. We can start building up education programs. You could do lunch and learn sessions. You can just be having chats with your neighbours, however you wish. You can then start looking at, okay, it's going to be more formal training. Is it going to be in data visualization, in using different BI tools? Or is it even potentially, let's go back to school and learn basic level statistics? Do they know what a t-test is? Do they know these different things? Do they need to know, or do they just need to know the basics and the core behind it? And then you can look at coaching to take that to the next level, make them proactive. So with the mindset on the time that we have, I'm just going to quickly go through the summary now of data literacy is our ability to communicate and understand data, both the ones who are creating it and those who are consuming it. Skill sets need to also consider communication as well as our programming, our math, our subject matter expertise. When you are creating communication packages, be it dashboards, reports, ad hoc analyses, think of the audience. Think of who is actually going to be the one reading it. Be in their shoes. Think of what they actually know about the subject matter, about maths, and tailor your report, your communication to match them. Make efforts to educate upwards. Not everyone's going to have the same background as you, but you can impart knowledge on to others. And don't be scared to educate up. And start thinking about, should there be a plan in place to improve the organisational data literacy out there? A lot to take in. I have various links, and I'll share these slides later through one means or another, most probably through our LinkedIn groups. You can follow those through, but there's a lot from Tableau on data literacy. If you ever get a chance, see Mac have a chat about that. He can talk forever. But we also have like the West Australian Data Science Institute. Innovation Hub is also proactive in driving data literacy throughout WA. So with that, unmute myself and stop my screen share and see, does anyone have any questions, comments, feedback?
So we haven't had any questions through the chat yet, but I really enjoyed that, Daniel. That was a really good introduction to data literacy. And I think especially like as an analyst, and I also got to introduce myself to everyone earlier. Like, hi, I'm Kate Hutcheon. I work at Perth Children's Hospital as an analyst. I'm really guilty of doing making a nice visualization or a nice graph and being implicit, not explicit. Like, I'm like, surely this graph, everyone can understand what's going on and you can see the cool things we're seeing. But I guess it's important to always remember that sometimes people don't come from these data backgrounds.
I find often in those situations, if you talk to your partner, talk to a child or someone and try to explain to them what's going on. I have a 3-year-old, and if I can try and explain to them, to a 3-year-old, what's happening, then I'm like, great, anyone should now be able to understand this. Just think, someone who has no idea about the subject matter, no idea about mathematics, can they still get that message across?
Data for 3-year-olds. I think that's your next talk title. And I guess I would ask a question as well. So obviously a lot of us here are coming from the data side of things. So we have a pretty good understanding of data, pretty good understanding of Tableau. And so what would you say are some of the things that we as analysts or as business leaders can do to actually improve like on the ground data literacy?
Pretty important things. When you have a dashboard in place or a continual report, be it a monthly or a quarterly report, seek feedback from both the primary consumer as well as secondary consumers and try to get them to be as honest as possible. Don't just ask for a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but say, look, is there anything which is confusing, anything which is missing, anything which they need to go off and find extra information on, so you can then look to improve it. I'd also try and look at putting in place, say, an annual review of the dashboards you have to actually see, great, let's actually see if we need to refresh them. Is there information in here that no one's using anymore? Great, let's drop that. Let's remove some of that clutter. Is there information which people are wanting but it hasn't been included? And organisations change, people change, what they are wanting to see change. So try and set a cadence to actually update these reports and the dashboards can be important. But also add in extra information like, great, I'll show you where the average is. I'll also show you the median, and then I'll give a little blurb about why there's a difference between the two. And that can be a part of that education onwards, because then they can go, oh, I didn't understand there were two different metrics I could have been using to look at this population group. Now I actually have a better understanding of what's going on. Far too
So we have a
often.
comment from Peter. Are you able to see that in chat? Essentially, Peter's just saying that looking at the model of early adopters versus resistors, sometimes it's good to get the group on board with the visualizations, and that helps to convert people. So almost like going out and preaching data. But definitely there is like a merit in top down as well as this sort of like bottom up.
Well, I'd actually say it's not both in tandem. So work at both educating upwards as well as the colleagues at the same time. So you can work and help those people who are the leaders continue to excel. You can help with those people who will follow and get them along the way. But as well, if you do have the naysayers, those people who are behind, well then think, why are they behind? What is the reason? And there are just some people who are just going to naturally resist. And sometimes you have to think, look, the Pareto effect, is it worth my effort? If I put 90% of my time in to get 10% people moving, I've lost a lot of effort. If I can put 10% of my time in for the 90%, great, let's get them moving. Let's get the vast majority of the organization moving. And consider what's the most valuable use of your time.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we might leave it there. But obviously, if you could load that PowerPoint up onto LinkedIn later, that'd be fantastic, and we can use those resources. And I might just jump back across to the presentation, because up next we have Lihua. And Lihua is a finance manager at Woodside Energy. She is a financial specialist. She's been working at Woodside for a number of years. And currently a large amount of her projects are taking that finance data and producing visualizations and making the data accessible to others through using Tableau and Power BI. And in particular today, she'll be showing us a dashboard that she's made in Tableau, which is used to view internal credit card expense analytics, which would be quite interesting, because I always like these case studies, just because obviously I work in health, but I'm sure you all work in different areas, and it's always really nice to see how different organisations use data differently. So I'll hand over to Lihua. And hopefully that has worked. Let me know if you can't share your screen.
Thank you, Kate. Hi, everyone. I will share my screen now. Hi, just a little bit more about myself. As Kate mentioned, my name is Lihua. I've worked for Woodside for 11 years now. I'm an accountant by background. I've done a variety of different finance roles in Woodside. A couple of years ago, our department formed a team, a digital delivery team focusing on data visualization and analytics, also robotic process automation, short for RPA, Fiori apps, and citizen data science and new technology. I joined the team about a year ago, and I found it extremely rewarding. My role primarily focused on data visualization tools such as Tableau and Power BI. I provide training, organized training, and support to the function, and also a lot of governance, because we have a lot of users and they all have their own way of using Tableau. So to make sure our Tableau server stays in check, and we have governance rules in place as well. I'm also starting to learn how to use UiPath Studio to automate some simple and repetitive tasks, and that's also very interesting. And so coming back to data analytics, like Kate mentioned, I'm showing you a sample dashboard using dummy data for confidentiality purposes. So all data here are not actually factual, but that's okay. I think we're just here to learn how we actually use Tableau. And I really liked the talk about data storytelling that we heard earlier, because it's actually not only about the culture of the company, but also individual preferences and the journey that we're all going through about data literacy and utilization. So I'll talk about some of that as well. Here we've got a sample dashboard that talks about credit cards and employee expenses. I'll just quickly start with the notes page, because with all of my dashboards, I like to have a page to kind of talk about the context of the dashboard, where the data sources come from. They may not come from a system everyone knows about. So I don't have a lot of text in here, but the idea is it talks about the data sources and also the various data transformation that you've gone through as well. So there's a few more at the bottom that talks about, okay, this is where the data come from and what sort of calculations I've done to derive the visualization. The next tab is just a quick overview. With all of my dashboards, I try to keep it simple. I mean, because I'm fairly new to Tableau as well, I've only just used it about a year. And I find, like we talked about earlier, it's not always about making it pretty, but also make it visually stand out and easy to grasp exactly what you're trying to convey. I incorporate corporate colors, the Woodside corporate colors. You can import a custom color palette into your dashboard and use it for all your dashboards. And I try to keep all of the dashboard that looks fairly consistent, so that all the filters will be on the left-hand side. And the charts itself are also fairly simple, so either bar charts or column charts, and sometimes some simple donut charts if it's just a few variables to show. As like all dashboards, obviously you can interact with them if you want to click on a particular thing, component of the graph to see how the rest would interact with it. Every time I build a dashboard, I try to sit with the users and the audience to kind of go through, because you may not assume they actually know how to interact with the dashboard. And sometimes also just to hear their feedback during the testing process, make sure the dashboard does work for the end users. For the design of this particular dashboard, when we think about design of dashboard, you obviously also think about what are the existing materials that you are utilizing, and whether are you replacing some of those spreadsheets or reports that may previously been utilized. What can this report used for other purposes? So it's also a process of collecting various ideas to when it comes to the design of the dashboard. And of course, you also do the testing to make sure it works as intended. So just show a couple more tabs. As I mentioned, a lot of visualization are all fairly simple, but it's meant to be simple for users who are not that familiar with data visualization. So another thing that I find with the company culture, especially in the finance department, we accountants or finance people are very much into detail. And if you talk to Steve, he would say, oh, no, forget about detail, just show them the graphs. But at the same time, it is about bringing them onto the journey of data visualization. So I find it's very effective if we show both the visuals, the graphs, as well as the ability to show them the detail on the same page. So in this particular one here, for example, the users will see this graph spent by country, and then I'm more interested in this particular country. And as you can see, they click on the country bubble and they'll be able to see all of the various details on the other side, and straight away they can be able to click and see and draw into it a bit further. There is also obviously those clicks button that you can use to bring in additional detail on that page if you are familiar with these functionalities. So that's just a simple country map. And there's also various ways we could do it. Like I said, the visualization itself is fairly simple. Again, if they're interested in a particular employee, for example, this particular employee, they'll be able to see the detailed breakdown of what sort of spend that the employee has claimed through credit cards or cash expense claims. There's a few parameters here. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Obviously, the idea, I sometimes have some descriptions here, how they can interact with the dashboard. Just, for example, they may forward this dashboard to another colleague who I may not have spoken with earlier, so they may see this, they may not know that they can actually interact with some of these labels or the bars to be able to see the detailed breakdown at the bottom. Next one here, again, the layout is all fairly similar, and once you see one tab, you probably work out the rest, how it operates, and it gives that sense of familiarity as well. I find people like to know when they know this is how it operates here, and it will be the same for the next one. They'll be able to click on a particular item and see a bit more breakdown. And through this process, they may be able to see something that looks a bit interesting and be able to draw further. As I mentioned, I use dummy data for this dashboard. It actually removed a lot of useful content, for example, the description of the expenses and also additional information about the spend that the managers or the reviewers might be able to see and ask further questions about receipts, tax codes, etc. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I just kept it really simple just to show you the layout. Now, the last one, I won't spend a bit more time on this last one, even though it still looks very similar to all the rest of the tabs. So the good thing about WebEx presenting is I can have my notes and you actually don't know that I'm using speaker notes. So here, as I mentioned, I've been using parameters to do a lot of built-in tests already. It is about credit cards and some of the analytics about potentially is this claim reasonable or not, fraud analytics. So when it comes to fraud analytics, you can think about a lot of your internal policies. We speak with our internal audit team to understand what sort of tests they may like to do for the spend that are being presented here. And of course, I've also done some Googling what kind of tests that people commonly test for expenses. So there are quite a lot of built-in, and this list can expand as we go along. We might find new policies that we would like to bring in this built-in tests. So for design purposes, all I did is I created a parameter, and this parameter is just a simple test. Number one is entertainment, number two is clothing. And then in the actual calculation, I'll create a calculation and do a if formula, say if the parameter equals 1, then do this or do that. For example, entertainment, I might filter on the spend category that's marked as entertainment. And for example, there's quite a lot of searches here. As you can see, you can search by wine. So these are inbuilt tests that you can already inbuilt. There is a wine marked in a particular spend. You may be able to see the field presented here. As I mentioned, that some of the details have been removed. But you can build in all kinds of tests for this, and the test Tableau is very quick at processing large amount of data. So we had three years worth of data in this, and Tableau is able to process very quickly on the fly. So for example, this one is looking at purchase card that's greater than 20,000 K. Those have not here. So you can also talk about authorization, whether the manager has authorization to do so. And all kinds of, you can do free text search as well. So you can do a search in here and then just type in the text that you're interested in, and then those results will also show up for you. That's a simple search function. So some other ones here that may be of interest is to talk about round number indicator. That's just a true or false selection here. So what this one does is that if a particular spend is a round dollar spend claim, then I'd like to filter on, just look at those. So, and the other interesting thing that I want to talk about here is probably this Excel button. So no matter how much you want to convince people, especially in finance world, I find people just cannot help themselves. I can see Steve is very unhappy about this. But I think we also need to be realistic about people's expectations. No matter how much you want to convince them, they still just can't help themselves. I know within Tableau, there's a download functionality. You can download to, sorry, I'm just seeing various different messages coming through, but I'm just gonna keep pushing until someone tells me to stop. Keep talking about this feature. So my idea is that people are going to do it anyway, right? So you might as well make sure you can control the output. So I read online is someone introduced a really cool trick about how you can do this. So basically, I'll just show you anyway, and then I can explain how I did this. So I just clicked on that Excel icon, and that basically will then now download. I'll just give it a second. It's sign in, just our visualization. This is our own Tableau server site. And as you can see that it's giving me an option to download. So if I just open this and show you what it looks like. So this is a preset CSV file that I set up myself because I wanted to control the output. And so as you can see, this is all the columns you can't, I'll just make it a bit wider so you can see. Because sometimes the columns that you want people to export may not be on the actual dashboard, or you may not want people to be able to export every single thing from the dashboard. So, and I have a particular case where one of the teams wanted to export information here for FBT purposes. So they wanted text information, while for this particular table, there is actually no real need for people who use a dashboard to see text information on here. So I needed to add additional columns for her to be able to download this. And so basically to control that, and those, if you wanted to find out more details, that you can just Google a Tableau tip, greatest tip forever. That will come up with export. Basically, what they did is you create a worksheet, format exactly how you want it to format. So sorry, this is actually a worksheet. And I just made everything visible by changing to white and remove row dividers and outlines, etc. And then you float it so that's that floating invisible sheet here, floated here somewhere that you can't really see. And then you added a link, or you added a floating icon here, and then you also put a URL. So the URL that you put in here is basically just like the URL that once you publish to Tableau server, you will generate a link for this particular tab. And all I did is I just added a .csv. I'll just show you quickly. At the end, .csv at the end, and what this will do is it will download the alphabetically. So on this dashboard here, there's a various sheets on this dashboard, and it will just download the one that's listed alphabetically first. So in this particular one, that's the invisible one. So it will download the first one. So you can do this for all tabs as well. So if you were to put one here, then you just make sure the URL is linked to this particular tab. I will check if there are any questions for me. Sorry, that's not my WebEx.
Yep, there have been a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that could be my sound. Yeah, there have been a couple of questions coming through. So Frank has asked whether that reasonableness test that you had, whether that is actually like predictive analytics or whether it's a sense check. So or like a manual sense check of the data.
It's a manual sense check. There is no predictive analytics here. So like I said, a lot of these are all just if function. So for this one here, basically I just use the contained function. So if the parameter is 12, and if the business description field contains is a function that you use, then bring it here. Maybe I'll bring up the calculation to show you if it's maybe easier.
So Stephen said that 12, the wine one, looks like his kind of option. So it'd be interesting to see the real data. I know that we're not allowed to, but that'd be quite fun to look through, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so definitely I will bring up the parameter. Okay, so okay, so which one did you say? Yeah, so a lot of contains, and for example, so basically just so I would have used the include exclude to and then in the filter make sure I only pick the ones that are marked as include. So those ones are excluded, and everything else is included. And in one of the filters, it will just only return results that are included, that are marked as include.
Yeah, that's a really nice use of parameters. I haven't used it exactly like that before, so it's quite cool. And I loved your Excel export because it's one of those tips that everyone uses Excel. And even the other day, we ran into an Excel spreadsheet that our organization had been using since 1997. And we said that day that your Tableau and Power BI are the future, but Excel is forever. So people really like to be able to export their data into Excel.
Yeah. One of the things I find is we also need to listen to the people who are coming on the journey. So they are very attached to Excel. They are very attached to tables. So rather than tell them, no, forget about them, I feel it is a journey to say you can have both, and it's better to have both. So make them feel respected and listened to. Then you will find that people will, then there will be a tipping point eventually. They will find, okay, well, actually charts and graphs are a lot more powerful. But there is a space for both to stay, not just one or the other.
Yep, fantastic. So that was a really wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for taking us through that. I really enjoyed seeing how comprehensive it was. And Stephen says, it sounds like he's a politician, but it's all about education, education, education. Well, thank you very much. And if we have time, which I think we do, we might just quickly hand over to Stephen if we can. So Daniel has asked if there's a danger in having the CSV output lead to ungoverned data sources. But my understanding of the CSV export is it is actually oh, you're understanding it as in like you're creating ungoverned data sources. Yeah.
So the CSV output is a worksheet that I created myself. So I created, and basically it's a worksheet, a table that a cross tab I created as one of the worksheets within the workbook. I just made it look like a trick for you to be able to export it to Excel. That Excel file is part of your. So if I just show you quickly, I'm not showing you, but it's you actually post it to your own Tableau server. You're not posting it to Tableau public or anywhere. So it's the same file path as everything else. It's just one of the things that I found out that by putting .csv, it actually downloads the first worksheet on the dashboard into Crosstab.
Cool. Fantastic. So Stephen, we might hand over to you if that's okay for an update on Tableau and any news and gossip that you can share.
Gossip. Okay, that's my forte. Absolutely. Yeah, let's do a bit of gossip. Yeah, thanks very much. I thought those presentations were fantastic, very interesting. The aspects of using Microsoft products, using Excel, using PowerPoint, we totally understand. Look, I mean, it's against my ethos, but we know that people need to use them. In fact, when I'm talking about what's new at Tableau, I can even tell you that of late, we've introduced being able to download a dashboard direct into PowerPoint, and also stories directly into PowerPoint as well. And in the very latest release, we've included the ability to take a existing crosstab that you have within your dashboard, within your workbook, and actually output it directly into Excel. So that's something that a few of you may be aware of already, that you were able to take within Tableau Desktop. You were able to do that. That is now available to you on server. So those integration points are available to you there. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I know that people will be needing to get back to work and so on, but thank you for just a few minutes to tell you a little bit about what's new at Tableau. I'm going to run through what we've done this year. So 2020.1, one of the most exciting things about that would have been the introduction of animations from my perspective. So if you haven't seen those yet, they aren't enabled by default in new workbooks, but if you're using 2020.1 or above, you can actually go to the menu options and find the animations to switch those on and just see how those work. I'll give you a brief demo of those very shortly. The other aspects of 2020.1 that were of real interest were things around the buffer calculations. So anyone who is utilizing any kind of spatial analytics, you can now create a buffer around a particular point and even use those within intersections, so you can see where there are coordinate spatial joins within that data. A lot of connector improvements. Login-based license management will be big for anyone who is managing a server with many users on it. People can now actually license their desktop and prep capability simply by logging into the server, making it far easier for administrators along the way to be able to do that. These are all from our website. So if you want to jump onto the Tableau website and see from the releases section, you'll be able to get some more information on all of these elements that have been included, including some new capabilities around explain data as well. Let me show you a few quick demos around these aspects. I won't do login-based license management for obvious reasons, but what we can take a look at is those buffer calculations and the explain data calculations. So let me just bring that one up for you. Here's my buffer calculations at least. Okay, so buffer calculations, you'll know already that you can include latitude and longitude from a file, as well as the ones that are provisioned for you by the web map service. I've got a number of car parks that I use around Perth, just labeled here as latitude, longitude. You may be aware that you can generate what's called a make point to generate a geometry, a point geometry from that with a simple calculation. That's simply a make point, giving it the latitude and longitude. And with any kind of point reference, we can then create these buffer calculations. So again, a very simple calculation using a buffer and whatever radius you want from that particular point. And as you can see with this one, I can then expand out to see what is the catchment area, if you like, or the buffer within those particular car parks that I'm using. And I use that along with some stops, bus stops around Perth, to say, okay, what are the bus stops that could potentially get me within those regions again? And this is using a spatial join in the data source so that I can see all of those elements there, all of those stops that fell within that particular catchment area, just using a join condition here on the data source. So those are the buffer calculations. Let me bring up another one for you and show you a little bit around explain data. I've got that somewhere. So many windows open. Here he is. Okay, so explain data was introduced in 2019.1, sorry, 2019.4, and you may not have realized it was there. You may not have utilized it in any way, but if you're on 2019.4 and above, you can now use explain data. What is it? It's AI-driven capability to help you understand the components behind any particular market of viz. So in this instance, what's actually going on in January 2017? We can see this chart. We can see that there's obviously an orange value here. It's an outlier. There's something also that in terms of the sales is fairly low. I could go and explore this in numerous different ways as you do in Tableau, but just by clicking on it, looking at the tooltip, you'll see we now have this little icon for explain data. And if I run that, what happens is that it goes behind that particular mark and profiles all of the data, samples it to try and find out what are the reasons behind that particular mark being in its position. And it comes back, because there are two measures on this particular mark, it says, okay, the first measure is around sales. Why is the sales value much lower than the average across all of those other elements? And it's saying, well, the mark that I've selected actually has a lower number of expected records. So simply there weren't as many transactions in that month as there were on other months. And I can switch over to profit. And from the profit aspect, it's giving me a couple of different reasons. One is that the average profit is lower, as you would expect. So the profit against all of the items that we transacted was lower on average. But also there's one extreme value that's in here, and maybe a few extreme values. Indeed, there's a big outlier here in terms of one item that was very, very poor in terms of its profitability. We can see the actual record that's in there. We can see what the difference would be if we removed that particular outlier. And I can include also this particular bit of analysis in my story. So I can include that as a new sheet. I can include it then as a part of the dashboard or part of the story as well. So explain data is giving you the ability to introduce AI components to your analysis as well. Viz animations, for those of you who haven't used them yet, well worth turning on and taking a look. They're not on by default. So you will need to actually action those. It's from the format pane and animations. And once animations are actually in play, then you actually get to see, I don't know how well this is going to work over WebEx, but you actually get to see the transformation between the different states as you select items. Now, sure, this looks sexy, but it's not about it just looking sexy. It has a real good use as well. And really for you to understand how things are moving and be able to translate that for an end user as well. So if we looked at a shell game, I don't know if you've ever done one of those shell games where someone puts a ball underneath a cup and they move them around quickly. If you only get to see the statuses at each level, it's very difficult to actually see where things have changed, where things have moved. So just an example, focus on any of these points. And as I move through each steps, it's kind of difficult to understand where it's moved from or moved to, right? Without a label on there or without some kind of identification. Again, I'm not too sure how well this will work on WebEx because it's not, it's slightly staggered. But with this, you should see a much smoother transition, and you should be able to see where your particular dot that you're looking at is moving from and to. And as part of that, it's obviously improving the understanding of how these elements are changing as you change some of the values within it. Won't go into that in too much depth. More than happy to do a demo for anybody at a later stage. Other things that we've included, and let me jump back to my PowerPoint for this. In 2020.2, the biggest part of that was relationships. Now, we've all struggled with relationships, haven't we? Me more than most, I think. But relationships are talking a new way of data modeling. So for anyone who has understood and found it difficult using things like joins and unions to collate data together, relationships provides a much easier format to ensure that you're going to get the right answer every time. And the reason it does that is that rather than actually joining the data prior to you actually analyzing it, it will actually create the right join condition for you at runtime as you select items for the view. So again, it's kind of one of those things that's a little bit difficult to comprehend until you start using it. But if you've ever hit those issues where you've had duplication of data, or you've found that data has been filtered out for unexpected reasons and you're not getting the aggregated results you expected, and that's due to the way that you've combined the data in a join in the relationship model. Relationships here will give you a far easier way to bring data together and use it going forwards. Have a look at some of the examples that are on our website. We won't have time today, unfortunately, to go into that much further. Some of the other things for 2020.2 was the set controls. So now you can actually add items to and from a set just by using a filter box. So those are very powerful in the way that you can add values to set and even use set analysis around those kind of things where you've got your Venn diagram union or Venn diagram intersection with those sets. So extremely useful to combine two different sets together, or even use two sets in comparison to each other to do some kind of basket analysis with that stuff. Esri Web Data Connector, I know a number of you out there are using Esri. You can now utilize the data within Esri far easier using that Web Data Connector. So that's something worth jumping into as well. One last thing, we have now introduced 2020.3 as of last night. So 2020.3 has just been released. The biggest component of that would be our enhancements to Tableau Prep. In 2020.2, we actually allowed incremental increases to data using Tableau Prep. We now have this ability to write to external databases in Tableau Prep. So you can have the full life cycle of taking data from disparate sources, using Tableau Prep to connect, clean, and transform that data, and using another database as an output for that, either as a forerunner to using in Tableau or even for using in downstream systems. So a huge improvement in the way that Tableau Prep works, and I'm sure I'll see a lot of different use cases for that right to external database in the future. The other thing that's a big improvement here is around using the grant license on sign-on. again, more of an administration aspect, but you can now have a pool of different licenses. And as people join Tableau Server, they're given a license automatically rather than having to do that up front. So that's another a big improvement from the administration perspective. Okay, as I've taken up much more of your time than I expected to, I will leave it there and hand back to Kate. Thanks for your time.
Cool. Thank you very much, Stephen. We did have one question from Andrew, and he was just asking if you know of any improvements that are planned for the user audit function. So just the ability to say who's looking at your dashboards and when.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. That's a good question and has actually already been answered. So part of the server management add-on, which was introduced towards the end of 2019, that server management add-on provides a lot more visibility over your deployment. We already have capability in the server admin views to see who is using, what kind of dashboards are being used frequently. But that server management add-on will give you far more detailed access to who's using what within the organization.
Cool. Well, fantastic. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to our panelists, and thank you for everyone who's attended. And yeah, thank you for joining the first Tableau user group online. We're hoping to do another one of these in a few months. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. If you're interested in presenting or joining the committee, definitely reach out to us as well. But that's it from us here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for helping out today, mate.
No problem, Frank. We went for a 57-minute recording there, so not bad at all.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think it was a pretty good run. I think that logging in prior to the event was a bit odd.
Yeah, it's painful. Yeah. I realised that, but everyone was essentially pending. They needed approval from me. I just couldn't find where it was that they had approval. So once I found them, I was able to release everybody. I think for the next session, if people have already registered, then I could set that pending out almost as a reminder on the day, because I can set it out an hour beforehand, and then we'll then get an email to say you're ready to log in. So that was one thing we certainly need to improve on, because it was obviously painful for people coming in.
Yeah,
but I don't think it affected figures too much. There was a lot of people who did attend. From that, so yeah, and good content too. It's great.
Yeah, it was good. All right, cool. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks again.
Yeah, speak soon.
Bye.